Hi, congratulations on your new prosciutto.
This leg of prosciutto is the Parma brand. Here you can see the age of the prosciutto. The bone in the middle is the femora, and we're going to cut it from one side. This is the back. It's much softer, much sweeter, and this is the front. It's a little bit harder, saltier. And we have the tibia and the fibula, which are two little bones inside. If you are going to have an event with 60 people or more, you're going to start in the big part, in the back. If you have an event of 20, 30 people, you can start in the front. And you slice it from the outside toward the bone, parallel to the bone. If we are going to cut it for home, we are going to separate the front and the back. Then we're going to slice it from the top toward the bottom of the leg. What we're going to do is we're going to cut off the front of the prosciutto, which is the smaller part. And it's also harder, saltier, tastier, like a very strong taste. If you look here on this line, on the front line of the leg, this is the shin bone, here. And then there's very little definition here, but right here, this is the knee. So we're going to come under this, like in this part here, we'll come right under the patella, which is the kneecap. We're going to go until we reach the bone, and then we're going to go parallel to the bone this way, in such a way that this piece comes off. So we missed the bone a little bit here. We left a lot of meat on the one side of the bone, but here, this is the patella, the kneecap. Okay, so we're just going to go around it. So this is the front of the prosciutto, and this is the top, and this is going down toward the leg. The skin is so hard that it can become sharp. It's a good idea always to go and trim it a bit, because, believe it or not, you can find yourself getting a cut from this skin. So we're just going to trim it up a little bit here, and then we're going to shrink wrap. Now we're leaving this part of the skin uncovered. It's called the sunia, the stuff they use to cover the exposed meat. And you don't have to mummify it because the prosciutto still breathes from the skin. So this is piece number 1. And now we're going for the main job, taking the femur out. And we're going to try to get as much meat from here too that we can. And that will be the second piece. So let's see how we're going about it. We're going to remove the sunia from here. Now in the sunia, there's nothing toxic or anything about it. It's just lard, salt, and some other stuff, but it's all natural. Don't eat it, it's not for eating, but it's just to cover the exposed meat from getting over-dried. There's another bone here. It's called the H-bone, and it's part of the pelvis bone, and for some reason they leave it in here. It has the shape a little bit of an oyster. You just have to go underneath it and cut it out. And the way you stand when you do this work, always work with your shoulders square towards your work area. Don't talk to anyone. Don't be in a hurry. Just concentrate. There's some meat here. You can take it off. It's very flavorful meat. And that's probably a good time to stop and get a bit of a flavor of what you just purchased. The top of the femur is right here, so we are going to go and cut around it and expose it. Okay, so we're cutting in here just with the tip of the knife without using too much force or anything like that, just to figure out where the bone is. You'll see we're cutting around the top of the bone, but not going very deep. We're just going to go exploring. We're going to go now like that from this side here, and all the time we just feel where the bone is. Here we're cleaning up the sunia a little bit. here, try not to go like over the bone, just follow the contour of the bone. Just need a little bit of patience and spread it as you go. And try to go and find whatever is holding it in place. Okay, so now this is where the femur and the tibia are connected. There's a trick that can cost you your knife if you're not careful. You just go between the bones here and look. If you go in, don't try to force it in. What we're going to do now is this. We kind of release it from everything that might be holding it. So we're going to take the bone from here. So now we kind of like go in between the bones. And there's a very strong sinew that's connecting these two bones together. And once you cut it, or part of it, it becomes much easier to dislodge the bone. Now, this bone still has a lot of meat on it. You can take it off. It's perfectly good to eat. What can you do with the bone? Well, if you have your best friend, your dog, give it to your dog. They'll love you forever. Okay, so now we got rid of the bone here. And what we can do, we can cut all the way from here, parallel to the bone. We continue here, and we go along the bone. This is a shin bone, the tibia, and this is the smaller bone, which is the fibia. Between those two bones is plenty of very flavorful meat. It's not like the most gorgeous slices, but the flavor is definitely worth the extra work. Now, finally, we're going to start finishing the job here. We're going to keep the open part covered. Take off the edge because it's very sharp. So this is the part with the plating. When we're going to do the plating, we usually start with the fruits on the plate because we don't want to leave the prosciutto out for more time than necessary. So in other words, you're going to have everything ready on the plate, then cut the prosciutto, and then serve it immediately. Now, when we get to the slicing, we always go from the top, which is the harder side, toward the bottom. Okay, so we're first going to remove this sunya. And remove any kind of fat that is not completely white. If it's a bit pink, it's okay, but the brown stuff, you don't want. So this is the very tip. It might be a little bit nutty and hard and salty. You should have a knife that is dedicated to cutting prosciutto. You need a super sharp knife. The shape should be like the shape of a carving knife. Usually, you look for a knife that is not flexible. It's long and narrow. So we start cutting it like that, getting a very straight edge. It's up to you how thick or thin you want to cut it. We usually prefer to cut it a little bit thicker than a machine slice. You'll find that it's a bit chewier that way, but you can cut it transparent if you want. It's really up to you and your patience, and that's the advantage of cutting it yourself. You can get anything you want out of it. And when you have pieces that are a little thicker or thinner on the same plate, you're going to get different experiences. So you'll see that the marbling immediately changes when you go in this direction. This part is always the drier part, where it has less marbling. How much is a portion? Well, what we have here is a nice platter for a couple, and it has all the food groups. It has about 50 grams of prosciutto on it, which is considered to be a nice portion. And prosciutto goes well with rough, nice bread. And as far as wine, you should ideally go for maybe a Malbec, for a little bit fruity, but don't go all the way to sweet.
And here it is. Bon appetit. Chin chin.